It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. Pete Francis alongside Willie Witten. Today, our special guest is Kenny Wayne Shepherd. He's releasing Trouble Is 25 on December 2nd. Kenny, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so 25 years, this is a long time, obviously. Going back, re-exploring these songs, re-recording them again. How did your perspective change 25 years later?
Well, it just kind of gave me the opportunity to objectively look at this record, kind of break it down, analyze it, all the parts, all the intricate details, and really come away like feeling really proud of the record. I'm going, hey, man, I wrote this stuff when I was 18 years old. I was somewhere between 18 and 19 years old when we recorded it. And this stuff holds up, man. This music holds up. The lyrics, the songs, the vocal melodies, the production, all of it holds up today. And the general consensus in the interviews I've been doing is like people agree that if it was put out today, it would sound just as current, just as relevant, because I always wanted, my goal was to make timeless music, not something that sounded trapped in an era, like pop music often tends to do. It just gets trapped in this one decade, if you will. And I wanted to write songs that people could listen to for years and years to come, for generations. And I think we accomplished that. And I just look back and I'm really proud of that. I'm really grateful for it because I know that it wasn't all 100% me. But to think of how young I was and listen to this and go, man, I love playing this stuff just as much today as I did when it was new. And people are selling out venues, buying tickets to come hear this music today, 25 years later, and they're just as fired up to hear it. It speaks for itself.
So when you look at the tracks on Trouble Is, going into the studio, were there a couple moments or a couple tracks in particular that you said, ooh, you know what? I do want to change a little bit of this. I want to try to approach this angle. Were there some aspects that you definitely wanted to maybe reshape and revisit at a different vantage point?
So I thought about that. And so what we originally did is we went into the studio and I would call out a song, right? And we go, okay, we're going to do True Lies, right? So first we're going to do True Lies just like the record. And then as soon as we felt like we got that, and I'm like, okay, now we're going to play True Lies like we're on stage, because these things have evolved over the past 25 years. You know what I'm saying? And so we're going to play this as if we're on stage right now, and the way we would play it, the way it has evolved over the past 25 years. And so we essentially did two versions of the record. And so we tracked all of the songs and we had two versions of each song. And then I'm like, okay, what do? Do I pick one approach or the other? Do I pick the more faithful approach or the more evolved approach? Do I pick, okay, well, we'll do this version of this song and that version of that song? And what I really kind of concluded was, I thought it was too much. When I would listen back, for example, to Blue on Black, that was kind of the defining song for me, because I listened to it and I go, okay, in the studio, everything's under a microscope, right? So you break it down and you go, hey, Chris, close your hi-hat just a little more, and it's going to alter the vibe, or let's try this snare instead of that snare, and this ride cymbal instead of that. Or, hey, when you're playing the bass, like leave this space open, right? Well, when you're playing live, like some of that stuff is kind of goes out the window. It's like you just play it the way you play it, and it is what it is. But I started to realize that people have been listening to this record for 25 years, right? And there's a certain level of attachment, that comes with that. And I was kind of starting to feel like we were getting too far away from the vibe, which is so important. And so I decided we're going to go with a more faithful approach. So I wasn't doing any crazy drastic changes. What I wanted to do I wanted to capture the vibe. So when people press play, they immediately, their brain registers, I know that record. That's the Trouble Is record, because that's what it registers. That's what that is. And then as they're listening, then all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, what was that? It's just like little inflections, little guitar riffs that are phrased slightly differently. Maybe Noah sang one line in the song just slightly different than the original, just little nuanced details to grab your attention so that then you go, oh, I know that record. Oh, but I am having a unique listening experience here,
Yeah, as a music fan, do you like when other artists go back and re-record their music?
Well, I understand why they do it. There's a multitude. Some people want to do it because there's things that have been driving them crazy about the record that they wish they would have done differently, and this is their opportunity to change it. For me, I looked at the body of work as a whole, and I'm going, there's nothing about this that I feel bad about. Like I'm happy with I'm proud of all of it. Even if there was like a little, like there was one lick in like True Lies, I think it was King's Highway, that it always stood out to me as a mistake. And then at the end of the day, when we went in to like redo it, I played the mistake. I did it on purpose, like, because I'm like, you know what? That stands out to me every time I listen to that song, and it's just part of the song.
Yeah.
Other people do it because there's a business case to re-record it, because the original record company owns your masters, and now you can have a version of one of your favorite records that you made, and now you own it. There's a lot of different reasons to do it. So I don't know. I'm a fan of artists being able to do what artists want to do, and if that means going back and revisiting a record, changing it all, or making a faithful reproduction or something anywhere in between, if that's what you feel compelled to do, and there's a reason to do it, then I'm all for that.
Kenny, I want to bring you back to the idea, watching the bits and pieces of the documentary. Like you said earlier, 18 years old, that's pretty young. That's very young. Do you think that your youth was an advantage in that, wow, you didn't realize how big it was, that you were at the record plant, that you had double trouble with you, that, oh my gosh? Or do you think having your dad, Ken Sr., by your side sort of gave you some insight into the industry? Which do you think it was more of? And do you think that if you had been put in that situation when maybe you were 27, you would have felt differently and you would have played differently because you would have realized how high the stakes were?
Well, I don't know. It's a little bit of everything and not so much any of it, kind of thing. It's a complicated answer, multifaceted, really, because yes, it's like, I think at that age, I think it just about anybody has a hard time realizing the full magnitude of something like this, like really what's going on. But at the same time, I knew what was going on. Like, I knew that we had unusually big success with the first record that a lot of people never saw coming. And I knew that I had to follow that up. I wanted to outdo it. I knew that I had double trouble in the room. I knew I was at a legendary studio. I knew I had Jerry Harrison from the Talking Heads producing. Like, I knew that. But then again, you look back, like, only as an adult, I can go back and go, good grief, man, like 18 years old and all this is going on, and you rose to the occasion and you surpassed everybody's expectations. Like, there's still something to be said for hindsight and perspective and looking at that going, wow, like, seriously, I don't know that I saw it that way at that age. My dad, and yes, I had insights to the business because, like, my dad was in radio and we went to every show that came through town, and we were backstage and meeting bands, and I got to kind of see the behind the scenes of what goes on in the touring industry. And then also, having the perspective of his radio career and growing up around a radio station and what it means to have a song on radio, successful song on radio. And then, he also did a little bit of artist management. And so I think a lot of who he was in his career helps kind of, prepare me for my career.
Kenny, we got a chance to get a sneak peek at the documentary that is coming out. And your dad mentioned that you were in all the meetings with record labels and things like that from a young age. How beneficial was that for you, getting that experience at such a young age?
Well, I think it's paramount. I would do the same thing for my kid if any of my kids wound up in this situation, because at the end of the day, if you're the artist, your name's the one that's on the line. It's your business. You need to know the decisions that are being made. You need to participate in them. You need to know why they're being made. You need to know what to consider when making a decision. You also need to know who you're in business with. and who you can trust and who you can't trust, and all of those kinds of things. And so that also prepares you, for adulthood, like when it comes time to take the reins yourself, or to be even more proactive and involved. So yeah, I think that's really important. I think that's giving me a jump start, to my insight into how the business actually works.
Kenny, I want to ask you, and we asked this of some other artists, about just the blues in general. And recently you did a little bit of touring. You got to spend some time playing with Buddy Guy and also Kingfish. And so right there, you're looking at pretty solid examples of 3 generations of the blues.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will say that the blues are really struggling. Some people will point to the 3 of you guys playing together and say, no, it's alive and well. It's never been better.
Mm-hmm.
Do you veer towards one side of that opinion or another?
I have always been of the opinion that, if you look historically over the course of blues music, there's always been talented people in the genre making good music. There's always, it's with any, I'm prefacing this by saying in any genre, okay? Not just blues music. You always have, there's going to be a group of people that are at the top of their game, at the top of the scene, that are putting out, what's considered at the time to be the best of the music. And then there's going to be other people here that are trying to make a name for themselves, and, that aren't at that same level. There's going to be, it's in athletes, it's in everything. Across the board in any industry, you have really great talented people, and then you have people that are struggling, and struggling for whatever reason. Then you have people that are putting out mediocre product as well. And so those people are just never going to ascend to that level. There may be more people doing it at sometimes rather than others, but nobody determines that. Blues music's been around for over 100 years. It has surged time and time again in popularity. There's been times where there's been more productivity in the genre, and then there's been times where there's been less. But it's a continuing force in the music industry. There's young artists that are continuing to try and make a name for themselves and put their stamp on it as well. So, I just think you just kind of roll with it. It's like the waves, coming in, the tide rolling in from the ocean. It's like you just kind of like loosen up and just take it where it leads you. And, you just never know when the next breakout star is going to come. When the next Kingfish is going to show up, when the next Larkin Poe, the next Samantha Fish, Allie Venable. It's like all these young people that are just coming up, and they're like, whoa, who's that? Check it out. New blood, and they're coming out and they're doing their thing and making a name for themselves. And so, it is what it is. And that's with every genre.
Now, we mentioned Buddy Guy. Recently, Buddy Guy announced his farewell tour. What has Buddy Guy and his music meant to you over the years?
I think Buddy Guy's contribution should not even be limited to his music, because Buddy Guy played on a lot of people's records, like Coco Taylor, I think it was like Wang Dang Doodle or whatever. There's like Buddy Guy was like a session player as well on so many of these historical blues records that were like huge hits for artists. And that's Buddy Guy playing on that song. It's kind of like Hubert Sumlin, except Buddy Guy, obviously really rose to fame as a solo artist, where Hubert was kind of always viewed as, a Howlin' Wolf sideman. But Hubert played on so many records that are just timeless and have influenced so many guitar players. Buddy Guy's fingerprint and impact on the blues world and rock and roll around the world it can't be measured. You can't measure that. This is the guy that like Jimi Hendrix would come and sit on the front row of a Buddy Guy concert, like taking notes and trying to go home and like move like Buddy and play wildly furious like Buddy. And Jimi Hendrix is rated as the greatest guitar player of all time over and over again. And he was influenced by Buddy Guy. Clapton, Jeff, the list goes on and on. Everybody has been influenced by Buddy Guy. And so, farewell tour. There's not, BB never got to do a farewell tour. BB was just doing it till he couldn't do it anymore. I think maybe there's something to be said for Buddy, seizing this moment and trying to go out, while he still feels like he's at the top of his game, and also have celebrate a life's worth of music and the body of music he's created, the influence he's had, and then also, have the opportunity to say goodbye to his fans, to say thank you.
So music and life, where are you right now in life and music relationship? What's next for you? This comes out, this reissue, no, redo, not a reissue, the documentary, December 2nd. Between now and then and after December 2nd, what's next for you? Do you have anything in the works? Or a new album come out or touring?
Yeah. So, well, just with the 25th anniversary of Trouble Is, we have the re-record of Trouble Is. So it's a new version, which we included a bonus track on there, which was a Bob Dylan song that we originally recorded for the record that didn't make the album, but people never even knew that it existed. So I'm like, dude, let's go re-record this song and put it on the record, because it was meant to be on the record, but it got cut. And so that gives somebody, a unique little window behind the curtain of what could have been. And then, we have the documentary film about the making of Trouble Is. We have the first ever vinyl pressing of Trouble Is with this new version. And then we also have the live concert DVD that's coming out. It's all kind of part of the package of the very first night of the Trouble Is anniversary tour. That's just all the Trouble Is stuff. Well, I still have a whole brand new album that I've been sitting on since February of 2020. We literally finished a brand new record right before COVID happened. And then, for 2 years, essentially, we were not making music. And so I just held on to it because I'm like, I was not going to put out a new record if we couldn't go out and play it. So that's probably going to come out sometime next year. And I'm really excited to put it out. I mean, the last studio record we put out was called The Traveler. I think that was one of the best albums that we've done to date. I feel like we're still making some of the greatest music we've ever made this far into my career. Well, this new record is going to be a continuation of that. I think it's a fantastic record. I think people are going to be really excited to hear it. And then we just, we're in the studio 2 weeks ago doing another album. So we got lots of new stuff like in the pipeline. We're going to be out on tour. The Trouble Is tour, anniversary tour has been so successful. We were only going to do it last year, but now it's been so successful that we're extending it into 2023. We're going to bring it over to Europe. And we'll probably ride that thing until the new record comes out. And then when the new record comes out, we'll have a whole new tour with a whole new set list, new material. And we're just going to keep it on. And that's the professional side. The private side, I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier with either one. I mean, we're the band is on fire. We're being more productive than ever. The fans are selling out the concerts almost every night, so we're playing to packed houses, bigger and bigger venues. We're still growing the fan base. And then, man, I'm very, very happily married, love my wife. We have a beautiful family. And right now I'm off the road and I'm getting to spend some quality time with them. And I don't know, man, I feel like every day I wake up, I feel like I hit the lottery. You know what I'm saying? So I'm grateful.
Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned your kids. Are any of them musically inclined?
Yeah, absolutely. My kids are all musically inclined. It just depends on what they choose to do with it. Nobody ever forced me or pushed me to try and make me be a musician or play guitar. I pursued it because I wanted to and I loved it. And I don't want to be that guy like trying to make my kids do that stuff. I feel like it's in their blood. It's clearly in their blood. They can all play guitar to varying degrees. They all love music. And I feel like we'll just see what they choose to do with it.
Awesome. Well, Trouble Is 25 coming out December 2nd. Kenny, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
All right, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Blues Rock Show for Kenny Wayne Shepherd and Willie Witten. I'm Pete Francis. We'll see you next time.